play some more because Liz Cheney, Claire, has also been the canary in the coal mine, pointing us to where she believes the evidence will actually take the investigation into the insurrection. She called out Kevin McCarthy versus subpoena before the Select Committee was formed, before she was its co-chair. Here she is talking about motive for the privilege claims.
Mr. Bannon's and Mr. Trump's privilege arguments do, however, appear to reveal one thing. They suggest that President Trump was personally involved in the planning and execution of January 6th, and this committee will get to the bottom of that.
Not equivocating, laying out her theory of the case. Her theory of the case is that by claiming privilege, it reveals one thing, just one. Mr. Trump was personally involved in the planning and execution of January 6th. This committee will get to the bottom of that. I don't doubt that's true, Claire, but just talk about what that puts in motion. It puts in motion the enforcement of the criminal referrals. It puts in motion, most likely, a subpoena for Donald Trump.
Well, you know, I think it's really important to focus on what this vote is tomorrow. This is a big, big vote. Because what these members are going to decide tomorrow is whether or not Congress has any power at all. This is a private citizen who has said pound sand to the United States Congress, a supposed co-equal branch of government that is tasked under the Constitution they supposedly revere with oversight over the other branches. It's the essence of checks and balances. So this is the moment for check over the executive branch. And what are they doing? Out of fear, out of cowardly, pure political fear, they are going to say to this private citizen, yeah, it's fine, ignore us. Because the personal wishes of a defeated president he says he doesn't want you to do anything. It is and everybody says, oh, it'd be unprecedented for Bannon to be prosecuted. This is unprecedented. Congress has never, ever willingly given up this kind of power, and they are going to do that tomorrow. And I really worry about that, the story history will tell, and what comes after it. Will Congress never again have the power to subpoena a witness? It is frightening.
Well, I mean, Robert Costa, I want to play you something Steve Scalise said, and I don't know that this answers Claire's question, but it goes pretty far to suggest that Steve Scalise doesn't think Congress should ever subpoena another witness.
But isn't it likely that a number of Republicans could vote to hold him in contempt because it's important that congressional subpoenas hold water?
I think you're seeing most members get tired of the witch hunts and the games. Let's focus on policies that affect everyday families right now instead of these partisan witch hunts that they want to keep going on.
I mean, Robert Costa, floor will be yours, but let me just talk about the policies that affect everyday families that Steve Scalise is on the other side of the everyday families on: COVID relief, infrastructure. I could go on, but go ahead. Is Steve Scalise for or against congressional subpoenas holding water, as a reporter asked him there?
Let's step back for a second. With all these partisan shots happening, coming across the bow from the Republicans and others, what really matters with this Bannon subpoena is not only the power of Congress potentially being diminished if Bannon doesn't end up testifying under oath, but we're not going to have the full story. The Willard Hotel is mentioned by Representative Cheney in her remarks yesterday. January 5th is the day that Trump and his allies pushed democracy to the brink, coordinating from just steps from the White House in a hotel suite. Rudy Giuliani, Jason Miller, Steve Bannon, talking by phone with the president who's pressuring Pence over at the White House, talking to lawmakers, coordinating the message with conservative allies. This was the day, the eve of the insurrection, to try to make it all happen, to put it in motion. And Bannon, in our reporting, is in that room. And what this committee clearly wants to figure out, under oath, what was being said specifically by Trump to this war room at the Willard, what was being done. They issued a statement in Pence's name late at night saying Pence agreed with the move to push the election to the House, even though Pence did not. There are so many looming questions about why what happens on the 6th gets put into motion. And if you want to answer that, you have to really know what exactly was said by the people at the Willard Hotel and to the President of the United States sitting across the street.
It's one of the more vivid scenes that you depict in a book full of vivid scenes, Robert Costa. So let me just follow up and add another name to the mix. I think you, for the first time, reported this, that Bannon talks to Trump about killing the Biden presidency in its crib. You also, I believe, are the first to report on the Eastman memo, which is what was written on paper, the white paper, if you will, for the coup plot. Talk a little bit more about the premeditated nature and how 1-5 makes clear that 1-6 was exactly what they'd planned.
When does Bannon talk to Trump? December 30th, 2020. That's after they have failed in the courts. And the Electoral College has already said Biden's the winner. The only thing left is certification on the 6th. So disrupting certification on the 6th becomes key. But you can't just disrupt it with some kind of conflict at the Capitol. You need a legal cover, a legal rationale. And so John Eastman enters the scene as someone who says there's a legal rationale for Pence to push it to the House. And he comes with this idea of alternate electors. And so Bannon, Trump, so many others within the White House say that's the play. Let's use this memo as the legal rationale and give it to Pence and say, Mike, this is all you have to do. We're giving you a conservative lawyer's argument for tilting it toward the House. And they needed to create momentum. That's why it's given to Senator Mike Lee of Utah. It's given to others. They want conservative buy-in. And it all culminates on the night of the 5th. Total buy-in is necessary so events unfold on the 6th to delay the certification and eventually push it to the House.
Claire, it's a day that was so horrific. We don't often tout its accomplishments, but we should stop and do that because they did succeed in delaying the vote. They put in the Eastman memo, laid out the plan. Everyone played their part. Now that Pence ultimately refused to leave the Capitol, which Robert's colleagues Carol Leonnig and Phil Rucker report, maybe one of those dominoes that didn't fall. But they did delay. And if Pence had driven away, they might have carried out more of what was on paper. I want to show you what the chairman of the committee, Benny Thompson, had to say about how aggressively they'll pursue this evidence.
We won't be deterred. We won't be distracted. And we won't be delayed. If you're thinking of following the path Mr. Bannon has gone down, you are on notice that this is what you'll face. The process we began tonight is a grave one. It seldom happens, and we'd rather avoid it altogether. But it's not reserved just for Steve Bannon.
I want to play one more piece of sound for you, Claire, because I think this is where the rubber might meet the road, as they say. This is Congressman Adam Schiff on Merrick Garland's reluctance to look backwards. Obviously, if the DOJ chooses not to prosecute, Benny Thompson's commitments may not hold. Let me show you that.
Look, I think there's a real desire on the part of the Attorney General, for the most part, not to look backward. Do I disagree with that? I do disagree with that. And I disagree with it most vehemently when it comes to what I consider even more serious offenses. For example, a taped conversation of Donald J. Trump on the phone with Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State from Georgia, trying to coerce him into fraudulently finding 11,780 votes. Because I think if you or I did that, we'd be under indictment by now.
So, Claire, the question is, do you believe that under Merrick Garland, DOJ will enforce these contempt votes in the House?
It'll be interesting to see, first, how quickly DOJ acts and what they do, whether they pursue civil contempt or criminal contempt. If they quickly pursue criminal contempt, we have another problem. That is, there will be every effort by Bannon and Trump to delay and to try to make this take months, even years. So it is really important, I think, for Congress to do a gut check, and for Nancy Pelosi and the chairman of that committee and other members of that committee, including Liz Cheney, to decide, should we go also down the route of inherent contempt that Congress has done in the past? It would be incredibly unusual, but after all, January 6th was incredibly unusual. Extraordinary times call for extraordinary measures, and that was an extraordinary time. And just listen to Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy and Lindsey Graham. They agreed on that day. So I think most of the country wants there to be some kind of accountability for what happened on that day. And if Merrick Garland won't deliver it, or if it can't be delivered in a timely fashion, I think Congress needs to think about using its powers of inherent contempt, which means they would go and arrest Steve Bannon.